I think I have to start this deep dive with a confession. My whole Saturday morning, it was a war.
Uh-oh.
I was out there, hands and knees, trowel in hand. I mean, just, full-on hand-to-hand combat with the lawn. I cleared this one patch perfectly. It was pristine.
Okay, let me guess. You looked out the window this morning, coffee in hand, expecting, victory.
And I saw a dandelion. Just one, standing right in the middle of it.
Oh, no.
Tall, yellow, and honestly, it looked proud of itself. It felt like a personal insult.
It's funny you use that word insult, because that emotional reaction is actually central to what we're digging into today. We're looking at the secret life of weeds. And the first thing to unpack is that feeling you had, that feeling that the plant is mocking you. It's not entirely in your head.
So I'm not crazy, because it felt like a deliberate act of aggression.
Well, the plant doesn't have a brain, but it definitely has a strategy. We tend to think of weeds as just plants in the wrong place. Rose in a cornfield is technically a weed.
Right, that's the classic definition. If I don't want it there, it's a weed.
But the research we're covering argues it's way too soft. There's a biological reality to weediness. Thompson brings up this quote from an American naturalist, John Burroughs, from way back in 1896. Burroughs had this very romantic view. He claimed native weeds were shy and harmless.
That sounds nice. The polite local plant versus the rude tourist.
It sounds lovely, but the sources just tear that idea apart. They basically point out that a shy and harmless weed is an oxymoron, like saying a quiet explosion.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. If a plant is shy, it doesn't become a weed. Real weeds are described in the text as, and I love this, pugnacious and belligerent.
Belligerent. That is exactly the vibe I got from that dandelion.
And that's the key insight to start with. The problem isn't just that weeds are ugly. Some are actually quite pretty. The real problem is they represent a loss of order. They're an insult to your control.
It's mutiny.
It's biological mutiny. And the reason they get away with it is they have evolved these specific, almost high-tech strategies to outsmart you. They're not just lucky, they are evolutionary geniuses.
Okay, let's get into the armory then. Because when I was going through the reading, I realized I've been bringing a knife to a gunfight. The first thing that jumped out was just speed.
The ephemeral strategy.
Yeah. I mean, these are plants that prioritize speed over everything else.
Well, think about it from the plant's perspective. If you are genetically programmed to know, in an evolutionary sense, that some giant with a hoe is coming, what's your best survival strategy?
Be somewhere else.
Or live your entire life before the giant even wakes up. Speed is the ultimate defense. Take annual meadow grass.
This is the one that seems to appear overnight.
It practically does. It can go from germination, a tiny little sprout, to dropping ripe, viable seeds in less than a month.
Less than a month. So if I'm weeding my garden once every 4 weeks, which, feels pretty disciplined.
You've already lost.
Well,
You're not preventing the next generation. You're just clearing space for them. You're the janitor, not the soldier.
that is deeply depressing. But the example that really floored me was thrale cress. It's this tiny, scruffy little plant, but its backstory is just wild.
Oh, this is one of my favorite examples of evolution in action. So in the wild, thrale cress is what's called a winter annual. It lives on rocky outcrops where the soil is thin. It dries out completely in the summer.
So it's got a deadline.
A strict deadline. It has to germinate in the fall, stay small over winter, flower in spring, and then die before that summer drought kills it.
It's living by a calendar.
Exactly. But then it escapes into our gardens. And suddenly it's in this deep, rich soil. We water it. There is no drought.
So you'd think it would just get big and lazy, right? Like, hey, I can relax now.
You would think. But instead, it went into hyperdrive. It realized, biologically, it didn't need to wait for winter anymore. It evolved to germinate and flower year-round. It compressed its life cycle so much it could produce 8 to 10 generations in a single year.
Wait, 8 to 10 generations a year. That's hard to even wrap my head around.
To put that in human terms, that's like a family going from great-grandparents to great-grandchildren in 12 months.
That is terrifying. It's a biological copy machine stuck on fast forward.
It's so fast that geneticists actually use it as the botanical equivalent of the fruit fly. You can watch evolution happen in, real time.
So that speed makes it a nightmare in the garden.
A total nightmare. And then you have the ones that rely on ballistics.
Oh, hairy bittercress. I have had personal experience with this one.
Most gardeners have. Usually right in the eye.
It's so nasty. The source talks about how the seed pods build up tension.
Think of it like a coiled spring. As the pod dries out, the tension just builds and builds. It becomes a loaded weapon.
And the trigger is just a touch.
That's the slightest touch. A breeze, your cat's tail, or your hand reaching out to pull it, and the pot physically explodes.
It really does explode. The irony is, by trying to weed it, you were helping it spread. You pull the parent and you launch the children 5 feet away.
It's a booby trap, a biological booby trap. And this brings us to a Latin phrase the source uses, which I think sums it all up.
Sine qua non.
Without which nothing.
Exactly. The author argues speed is the sine qua non of a bad weed. If it grows slowly, even a lazy gardener can defeat it. But a fast weed, you have to be faster than biology.
Okay, so they're fast. That explains how they survive once they're in the garden. But how do they even get there? I mean, I cleared that patch completely. There was nothing green.
This brings us to the Air Force.
The dandelion parachute.
It's an engineering marvel. It's designed to create this specific little vortex above it that keeps it in the air. But what I found really stunning wasn't the physics of it, it was the math.
This was the part where I started to question everything. You know, people always say, oh, don't worry, seeds don't travel that far.
And statistically, if you're just looking at one plant, that's actually true. The data shows that, 99.5% of dandelion seeds, they land within about 10 meters of the parent.
30 feet, which sounds great. If I clear my yard, my neighbor clears theirs, we should be fine. But, and this is the big but, you're forgetting the sheer volume. Nature wins by overwhelming numbers. A healthy population of dandelions is about 700,000 plants per hectare.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot.
And now if each of those plants produces, say, 200 seeds, you're at 140 million seeds.
140 million, just floating around.
So now let's look at the outliers. Even if a tiny, tiny fraction, let's say 0.014%, travels just 1 kilometer.
Which is a long way. That's outside my neighborhood.
Do the math. 0.014% of 140 million.
Is still about 20,000 seeds.
Exactly. 20,000 seeds raining down on a target a kilometer away.
So I'm sitting there thinking I've secured my perimeter, but I'm actually getting bombarded by a field 3 blocks away.
Precisely. You're not fighting the weeds in your garden. You're fighting the weeds in the empty lot down the street. The air is literally full of reinforcements.
And it's not just the wind. The birds are in on it, too.
The bribe strategy. So plants like holly and ivy, they produce these sweet, fleshy fruits. It's a transaction. The bird gets a meal.
And the plant gets air transport.
Yep. The bird flies off, excretes the seeds somewhere else, complete with a little prepackaged starter fertilizer.
Okay, so they're fast. They have an air force. But I want to talk about the stuff that gives me nightmares. The stuff happening underground. Because there's nothing worse than pulling a weed, hearing that snap, and knowing you left the root behind.
Yes. The underground warfare. This is really the difference between annuals and perennials. Annuals play the numbers game with seeds. Perennials, they dig in. They have an underground armory.
The reading breaks it down into runners and rhizomes. Runners I get, that's like strawberries, you can see them.
Right, stolons. White clover is a machine. A single plant can produce 50 meters. That's over 160 feet of runners in 1 year. But you can see them. You can fight them.
But the rhizome, that's the silent killer.
A rhizome is diabolical. It looks like a root, but it's an underground stem. It grows horizontally, deep down. And the horror story here is field horsetail.
Reading the stats on field horsetail made me want to pave my entire yard.
It should. Its rhizomes can travel 100 meters horizontally. That's the length of a football field.
So it could be coming from a neighbor 3 houses down.
Easily. And the depth. They can go down 5 meters. That's 16 feet deep.
16 feet. So I'm out there with my little trowel, scratching the top 2 inches, and this thing has a bunker 2 stories down.
A bunker is the perfect analogy. And here's the kicker. Because it's a stem, it's filled with dormant buds. So if you try to chop it up with a spade,
I'm not killing it.
You're propagating it.
Oh.
Every tiny fragment you create regenerates into a new plant. You are cloning it.
It's the hydra.
That is the exact metaphor the source uses for taproots, like dandelions. You cut off one head and 3 more grow back.
So when I snap that dandelion root...
You likely turned 1 dandelion into a cluster of 3.
Great. That's
Yeah.
great. And then there are the ones that use, what basically, grenades. The bulbils.
Yellow nutsedge. This one is something else. It produces these tiny tubers on its root system. And the multiplication rate is just exponential. One single tuber can become 6,900 tubers in 1 season.
6,900.
It's a biological explosion happening in slow motion right under your feet.
It really makes you look at the lawn differently. We think of it as this manicured, controlled carpet. But based on this, the lawn is a gladiator arena.
It's survival of the fittest in its purest form. I mean, think about the lawnmower. It's this massive evolutionary pressure. It's a mechanical predator that decapitates anything tall once a week.
So most plants just die.
Right. So the only things left are the special forces, the plants that have adapted specifically to survive that blade.
And the source lists a few strategies. The first one is just ducking.
Daisies and plantains are masters of this. They flatten their leaves into a tight rosette, pressed right against the soil. The blade just passes millimeters above them.
And the daisies, I've noticed this. Sometimes you see them blooming below the cut height of the grass.
They're incredibly plastic. They've adapted their flower stems to creep sideways, so a daisy can flower and set seed in a manicured lawn without ever sticking its head up.
That is brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. But wait, my lawn has dandelions, and they do stick their heads up. I mow the flowers off all the time, so how are they surviving?
And that connects right back to the Air Force. The dandelions, currently in your lawn, reproductively, they're doomed. You chop their heads off before they can seed.
So where are the new ones coming from?
The neighbors. The dandelions in your lawn didn't seed themselves. They are imports. It's a constant wave of immigration from outside the kill zone.
So I'm fighting a defensive war against an enemy with infinite supply lines.
That is a very, very accurate way to put it.
I want to shift for a second to the pond, because the research mentions that water weeds are in a league of their own.
Water weeds are unique because they can be total ecological disasters. And the sad part is, so many of the worst ones, fairy moss, parrot feather, they're escaped ornamental plants.
People bought them on purpose.
We did. You buy them because they look pretty in fish tank or a little garden pond. But if you dump that tank into a natural waterway, these plants grow so fast they just choke everything out. They block the light, deoxygenate the water.
It's an environmental catastrophe from home decor, which brings up this idea of the trader plant, or garden thugs, as the source calls them.
The plants we invite in that then turn on us.
I have a personal grievance here with Spanish bluebells.
Ah, yes. The war of attrition. The source describes them as just a brute. They're bigger, stronger than the native English bluebells, and they just take over.
The author says the only good thing about them is eventually they fill every single inch of the garden so they can't spread anymore.
You've reached a stalemate. The weed has won by total occupation.
And then, of course, the ultimate traitor. Japanese knotweed.
Which started as a prize winner.
That's the crazy part. It wasn't an accident.
No. In the 19th century, it was winning gold medals, sold as this beautiful, exotic ornamental, and now it literally disrupts mortgages. In the UK, you can't sell a house if you have it because it can grow through concrete.
From a gold medal to a property value destroyer. This leads to the whole philosophy of it, right? Because the line between weed and valued plant seems really wobbly.
It's extremely blurry. It's often just a matter of fashion.
The source gives that great example of purple moorgrass.
Yeah. For centuries, farmers hated it. It was a weed of boggy, useless land. If you told a farmer in 1920 that people would pay good money for it.
The author says they'd assume you were at the vino.
Drunk, exactly. But look at any fancy plant catalog today. Ornamental grasses are trendy. We want that wild look. So suddenly the weed is a star.
So is a weed just a plant we don't like yet?
Or a plant that likes us a little too much. I mean, the text argues even a rose could be a weed if it behaved aggressively. If a rose started sending 100-meter rhizomes under your patio, you wouldn't call it beautiful, you'd call it a pest.
That's a really good point. It comes back to that control issue from the beginning. It's not about the plant, it's about the behavior. We want nature, but we want it on our terms.
Which leads to the source's final piece of advice, which I think is actually quite profound. Identification first.
Don't sheet first and ask questions later.
Right? Life's too interesting to just pull up a seedling before you know what it is. It might be a weed. Or it could be the offspring of your favorite shrub. Or some rare wildflower that blew in.
Patience in the garden. That's a hard thing to practice when you know about the 6,900 tubers waiting to explode.
True. But you have to respect the adversary. You can't just hate them. You have to understand them.
So let's wrap this up. We started by saying weeds aren't just unwanted plants. They're biological warfare agents.
They are adaptability personified. They use physics for flight, ballistics for dispersal, exponential math for reproduction, and they build underground bunkers that would make a doomsday prepper jealous.
And the relevance for us, when we're standing there feeling insulted by a dandelion.
The relevance is that the battle isn't really against the plants. It's a battle against nature's fundamental drive to fill a vacuum. You create empty, fertile soil, and nature creates a plant to fill it. We call that plant a weed. Nature calls it a pioneer.
That is a humbling way to look at it. We're fighting the planet's immune system. We clear the land, and the planet tries to heal the wound with weeds.
In a way, yeah.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought based on that purple moorgrass example.
The journey from pariah to prize winner.
Exactly. Look at the enemies in your garden right now, that dandelion, that creeping buttercup. Is it possible that in 100 years, our great-grandchildren will be paying top dollar for them at a garden center? Maybe we're not fighting biology. Maybe we're just fighting our own changing definition of beauty.
And maybe the weeds know that. They're just waiting for us to catch up.
I think they are. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. And good luck out there in the garden. You're going to need it.
You certainly will. Goodbye.